Exactly. If you weren't picking up the sentences that were utterly dripping with sarcasm right there, we're referring to, in the main topic of today's episode, those who wanted to cage, suspend the civil liberties of, and or run completely out of society in any way they deemed most expedient. People who did not go along with the capital C word of the last couple years regime. And what we're talking about is an article in particular published in the Atlantic this week.
You might have heard of it.
Get a day. Actually, wow, very, very, very serendipitous timing here. The article was actually published on Halloween, October 31st, 2022. And the article in the Atlantic...
By the way, hope you had a great Spooktober, by the way. Hope you dressed up as a lot of slutty witches, as a lot of slutty Ghostbusters, as a lot of slutty Woodies, as I already did.
Unless you were dudes. Nobody wants to see that.
Other dudes do.
So, published on Halloween of 2022, we have an article in the Atlantic titled, and I quote, "Let's declare a pandemic amnesty."
Oh.
Subtitle, "Let's focus on the future and fix the problems we still need to solve." And this is published by an Emily Oster.
A toxic ex-girlfriend that just wants to get back together with you.
And scrolling to the bottom of the article, which again, this article is going to be linked at wdpodcast.com/119. You'll be able to see it in the description on this video, YouTube, Rumble, ODYSEE, and FLOTE. And Emily Oster, according to her bio at the bottom of this article on the Atlantic, says that she is an economist at Brown University. She is the author of, quote, "The Family Firm, a data-driven guide to better decision-making in the early school years."
Where the fuck was she over the past 2 years?
"And expecting better, why the conventional pregnancy wisdom is wrong, and what you really need to know." So, as you can tell from her credentials and from her stellar academic publishing history, she is totally qualified to write, well, whatever this nonsense article is. But you can tell from the title exactly what it is. Basically, if I could sum up this entire segment that David and I will not shortchange you on, we will flesh out this in more detail. But basically what she's saying is, we were scumbags for the last couple years.
For the right reasons.
Myself and people like us, of course, always for the right reasons, because they never do anything for nefarious purposes.
Hitler definitely knew he was a villain when he was doing what he was doing.
We deserve amnesty, right? Because all of the things that we advocated for, we did out of ignorance, but it was a particular kind of ignorance. It was ignorance that was well-intentioned, don't you know? It was just that we didn't know, right? And we were scared like everybody else, and we wanted to do what we thought was the most responsible thing at the time. Now, if the most responsible thing at the time happened to be forced pokey medical procedures or forced toss you into concentration camp cages if you chose not to go along, or making sure your kids didn't get educated if they didn't also get this procedure, despite the limited health impacts from said things that they were supposed to be protected from, or forcing you to put a little face decoration on your face. Not my words of CDC Director Walensky. All of those things were driven by benevolent ignorance. Not out of animosity, not out of anger, not out of hating you or wanting to punish you because you didn't think or act as we told you to. That was not our motivation. It was just benevolent ignorance. That's all it was. So we deserve forgiveness. Emily Oster and the hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people who thought and acted like her. And David and I have some thoughts.
I know I'm supposed to be the funny guy. I know I'm supposed to be the Joe next door that has the macro view on the microaggressions that they always espouse. But this is egregious. at this point. I don't, again, to caveat back onto our strike, when now they're coming out and saying that the things that they were forcing us not to say were true the entire time. They're coming out and saying that all the things that we were telling people were radical, all the things that we were telling people that we need to remove them, that we need to shut them up. They are the outliers, the ones that we can't have them because then we can't have a total control over what people do. Those were conscientious objectors. Those were protesters. That used to be legal in this country. We weren't saying we don't trust anything. The world is upside down. Pray for forgiveness, children. The rapture is coming soon. We just said, hey, these shots haven't been around for a whole long time. Or pokey pokies, duties, whatever the fuck you're saying. This lockdown might not be the best answer. A lot of things that we said.
Or, without getting specific to that particular medical procedure, which we take no stance on one side or another, YouTube.
Never would.
We got nothing to say about that particular medical procedure.
When we just said that, hey, we don't feel comfortable. Let's wait on this. And it's so apropos that not a year before this pandemic, exactly that happened in Harvey Weinstein's office. And we had a huge movement about it. And even though those people that had hesitancy at first and then gave in and then got all the stardom that they wanted for 10 years, and then they were washed up for 10, and then came back out and said, yeah, I had to look at his gross dick. They got, you're a hero. You're a hero. You're a goddamn hero. No, you weren't. And you're not now. All the people that were standing up for morality, wear your mask twice, get all these things that everyone else says that you need to get, you weren't. Now it's starting to look like you were a sheep. You were a member of the herd. You weren't thinking for yourself, which is what is so dangerous in a society like ours. That's so diverse, that has so many different wonderful conjectures to it. Like, there's so many colors in our rainbow, so to speak, Dane. And I just want to say that, like, you're not wiggling your way out of this one. And I know it's funny that this article came out right before election season. Right before they knew that they were about to get, Dane, can we say it?
They're going to get torched.
They're going to get
absolutely murdered at the ballot box.
They're going to get motherfucked. Because not only is it just what they did over the 2 years of the pandemic, that they're pushing, that they said, we're following the science. And then all the science that they were following, the science, turned out to be like, we didn't do anything.
Or more importantly, it happened to just conveniently change once their side got power.
And it just might have happened to be the largest fucking redistribution of wealth ever in this fucking world's ever seen in history. I don't know. Oversawn
by the party that is allegedly the champion of the little man and wants to tax the billionaires and
we're going to bring him to justice.
Make sure that the wealth is distributed evenly. You know, listen. Find those coincidences where they happen to lie for yourself. Don't let David and I direct you by the nose to wherever the conclusions actually are. We think that the self-selected group of people that listen and watch this show probably already know what's going on, and that you have friends and family and connections all over the place that would also have those same conclusions. And to them, we ask that you kindly share this episode. But before getting too much more into that, I just want to quote from the first two lead-off paragraphs of this article. And these are the only two that I'm going to quote from at length because I really think that they get to the heart of the matter of this whole pandemic amnesty for the scumbags who wanted to turn you, dear listener or viewer, into a second-class citizen simply for disagreeing with them. And then occasionally throughout the article, we'll, point out little things here or there. But these first two paragraphs really, really get to the matter. So I quote, "In April 2020, with nothing else to do, my family took an enormous number of hikes. We all wore cloth masks that I made for myself. We had a family hand signal.
We know they don't work.
Which the person in front would use if someone was approaching on the trail and we needed to put on our masks. Once, when another child got too close to my then 4-year-old son on a bridge, he yelled at her, quote, 'social distancing.' These precautions were totally misguided. In April 2020, no one got the coronavirus from passing someone else hiking. Outdoor transmission was vanishingly rare. Our cloth masks made out of old bandanas wouldn't have done anything anyway. But the thing is, we didn't know." End quote. Now,
We. Who's we?
yeah, exactly.
Who's we?
Miss Emily Oster, you got a fucking mouse in your pocket? Is that the we? The two of yous?
Remember
Because there were certain podcast hosts, not loosely affiliated with WD Podcast, but happen to be just exactly WD Podcast, in addition to platforms much, much, much bigger than
living
ours,
in a state that was getting reprimanded for people going outside without masks on.
who were saying repeatedly, that
One more time?
repeatedly,
Thank you.
that some science, not the science, because we don't have enough hubris and arrogance to claim that whatever our positions are is quote unquote the science, is that some science was telling you, yes, in April of 2020, that ultraviolet rays from sunlight pretty much killed this thing on contact. That in an open air space where air particles are much more broadly dispersed than in a closed, confined space, the chances that you will get a viral load substantial enough to actually contract the virus, even if somebody passed you having it, that you would get it, or that your highly porous cloth, what CDC Director Walensky later called nothing more than a face decoration, was actually not doing anything for you. Us and many, many like us, as early as April 2020, were saying exactly that. Not because we had some sort of divinely inspired wisdom imparted upon us by the Almighty Himself or anything else like that, but simply that there happened to exist in 2020 itself, in April 2020 itself, some scientific articles and publications, studies that had been done according to the actual scientific method, not hashtag the science as spread to us by St. Fauci himself.
Well, no, the God of science. The God of science.
That suggested that maybe these concerns were a little bit overblown. So you'll have to pardon us if this whole "we didn't know" at the time doesn't really pass the laugh test. With all due disrespect, kindly, Emily, and the rest of you who would read Emily's article and think that it really has something to say about yourself, go fuck yourself with as much hard and sandpapery things as you have at your disposal. Because if you expect to get amnesty from us, those of us that you wish to subject to second-class citizenry, if not worse, based on what you did or
While
didn't know.
you're still suppressing information, by the way, while you're still suppressing
yourself.
information about the things that you are arbitrating are affecting humans today in this country, that seems like crocodile's tears to me, Dane. I don't know about you, but what you don't get away with murder and then say, hey, guys, come on. Was it really murder? Like, look at his life. He was a fast food worker. He was 18. He wasn't really probably he smoked a lot of weed. Which is legal, right? It's illegal in this state. So like, I had every justification to murder him because I thought that maybe because he smokes weed, maybe it'll lead to a life of crime. And then I prevented a murder. So I should be a hero. I definitely shouldn't be villainized for committing the thing that we all agree that you shouldn't commit. Because I took it upon myself. I took it upon myself to be the hero before he could become a villain. Got it? Okay. I'm going to go home, sleep in my bed. Again, like, when does the hammer ever fall? And that's the depressing thing. What is the outlook on this? Where's they're already hedging their bets. Fauci's retiring when he knows the red wave is coming. And if he stayed in office, he would get motherfuckingly indicted. And he'd be on Capitol Hill in front of the Senate every day. Why did you shut down the country? Well, I never shut down the country. And then stop. And then they just press play and send a 20-minute catalog of all the clips of him saying, well, if I would have known that shutting down the country would have made me a god of science more quickly, I would have done it more quickly, obviously. But if I would have known, like...
Is the Fauci sounding like Trump? Is that intentional?
They're both from New York.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
To question Anthony... No. Donald Trump is more like... He's more airy. He's like, I have the best awards. I've got more awards than anyone's ever seen. You understand me? She's gross. She's filthy. She's disgusting. Like, Fauci is like, Senator, I am science. Like, there's a subtle difference. Yeah. But you see it. You see where it's at.
The New Yorker comes out.
Right.
Not to say that we don't love our New Yorkers, listeners, and viewers. We do love you, but listen, we got to make fun of these.
But hey, go fuck yourself. You know what I mean? All right, paisano. But anyway, all I'm saying is that I've got this distinguishingly... Let me take that again. Distinguishingly... I'm going to nail this word. Hold on. I'm going to skip it. I've got this sinking feeling in my stomach that nothing is going to happen to any of the people that ruined millions of people's lives with their edicts. Let's call it what it is. It's an edict. It's draconian laws that were bestowed upon us during a time that we needed to have a lot of understanding, a lot of conversation, a lot of words being shared. They said that you had to be all in our side. If anyone ever questions anything that you ever say, you need to shout them down. You need to call them a grandma killer. That in times of chaos, communication is key. Ask any military officer, ask any military operator ever. Communication is key. And what did they do? They shut you up in your home. They told you anybody that questions our narrative is a villain. Go. And now we can't hold them responsible for that. Go fuck yourself.
Now, I want to quote from two more things in this article, not near as long as the first two paragraphs, and just point out a couple things about that, and then we'll send you on your way until you come back to us next week for episode 120. This sentence at the end of, I don't remember if it's the third, fourth, or fifth paragraph, but it's the last sentence. It says, quote, but most errors were made by people who were working in earnest for the good of society. So note how she characterizes her side of the ledger. right? The people that made mistakes made honest mistakes. And those honest mistakes were made in the exclusive pursuit of what's good for society. Well, let me read you, because maybe you forgot about this one, but we sure as fuck didn't, Emily. Let me read you just one article headline from not even the height of 2020 or even 2021. This article was published in January 10th of 2022. So this year, right? When almost 2 full years after you said, well, we should forgive you because you didn't know. Almost 2 years after that, but well after the spikes in the charts had come way, way down. Here's an article headline from the Los Angeles Times. Again, both the Amnesty article and this article will be linked at the show notes page as well as the descriptions under these videos. The Los Angeles Times article says, quote, the title is, column, mocking anti-vaxxers' COVID deaths is ghoulish. Yes, but may be necessary. And then it has a picture of a woman who apparently died. And underneath that picture, it says, Orange County GOP figure Kelly Earnby died last week of COVID after disparaging anti-pandemic measures. Now, I don't know what Miss Earnby had to say, and I don't particularly care. I just want to point out to Emily, the author of the Amnesty article, that as recently as January of this very year, 10 months ago, articles were being written that mocking the deaths of people who happened to disagree with you about the policy conclusions of COVID was probably necessary. Now, does that sound like somebody who is working in the earnest good of society? Or forget that article. Does this sound like somebody who's working in the earnest good of society as somebody who would advocate for a policy that people in old folks' homes, some of them with dementia who can't remember 5 minutes ago, but can at least recognize the faces of their children, aren't allowed to hug them? That family members aren't allowed to attend the funerals of their grandparents or parents because the arbitrary number decided by the local politicians is 15 people per funeral.
A wife can't
and you were the
see
16th
their husband
person
while they're dying of cancer in the ward because of COVID protocols.
Or
just extrapolate it out as far as you want. Go ahead.
Even somebody being on a ventilator with COVID, whether they're vaccinated or not. But just somebody in the hospital on a ventilator as a result of COVID is not allowed to go in and spend the final moments of that person's life. The family members are not allowed to go spend with them. Does that sound like somebody who's acting exclusively in the interest of society? That we have to jettison all other aspects of humanity, the idea of community, the idea of human interaction, the idea of physical touch and what that conveys in terms of a sense of understanding and feeling and comfort that human beings need on a very fundamental level. Does that sound like those policies were acting exclusively in the interests of society? I suggest maybe not, Emily. And I suggest that whether you knew or didn't know, whatever you claim to know or didn't know, at whatever point throughout the pandemic that you did or didn't know it, that advocating for those policies and even worse, putting yourself on some fantastical moral high ground of your own making had nothing to do with what's best for other people or society at large. And it had everything to do with hubristically and arrogantly thinking that you were in the right and that anybody that disagreed with you was the personification of evil. Again, I say, Emily, fuck you. And fuck anybody who thinks like you and thinks that you deserve amnesty. You don't deserve amnesty even after an apology, but we know full well that an apology is never forthcoming because of the way you worded this article, that your side was always in the pursuit of good, and that the other side, as the last thing that I'll quote from this article, is that, quote, in the face of so much uncertainty, getting something right had a hefty element of luck to it. You notice that? You notice how her side is always motivated by good
with science.
and that anything that we just happened to get right on the other side that said, maybe you should allow that grandchild to hug their grandmother before they die. Maybe you should allow that 16th person to attend the funeral of the person that they'll never get to see again. That maybe our side was perhaps informed by something a little bit more than luck. Maybe it was informed by some form of science. Maybe it was informed by general basic fucking human compassion. Emily, maybe it wasn't just blind luck. And the fact that you still, in having the unmitigated gall to ask for amnesty and characterizing your side as benevolent do-gooders that just happen to not know all of the facts, and our side is purely
But you said you had them the whole
lucky
time.
in terms of getting it right.
You said you had it the whole time. You said you had the facts and the science the whole time. Go ahead.
The fact that you word it like that tells me that you're not fucking sorry. And if you're not sorry for the human destruction on an unimaginable scale that you and people like you created throughout all of COVID, then not only do you not deserve amnesty, you deserve exactly what you said should have been done to us and more. So no, there will be no apologies accepted if you even had the humility to put one forward. And there certainly, sure as fuck, will not be any amnesty granted, here or forever. No.
And I think that this whole episode can be surmised in one quote: "The path to hell is paved with good intentions."